Welcome to another episode of A Pint with Seaniebee. Thank you so much for all of your tweets, twats and shares. The audience is growing every time a new one comes out, and I thank you all for tuning in every 10 days when I launch one. I have a very interesting guest today. I'm coming to you from sticky Singapore, Mount Faber. I'm in the home of a very good friend of mine, Julie Sherborn. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Sean, and welcome to my humble abode.
It's not, you should see it, it's not that humble at all. Julie is somebody who has been one of the most successful business women in Asia over the last 2-3 decades since she came here. She's currently working in the non-for-profit business and has spent most of her career pioneering many of the biggest media houses across the region. When you hear her talk, you will hear an accent. She's Welsh. Where were you born?
Oh, I was born in the valleys, in the eastern valleys in Vale in South Wales. So, yes, and when I say that, yes, the accent does come out. You are absolutely right.
Was that mining area?
It was indeed. In fact, my grandfather was a miner.
Oh, really?
In the marine colliery, which, along with so many other industries right now, it doesn't no longer exist.
Yeah, right. And what was it like growing up there?
I didn't grow up. I was born in Vale, but I grew up more towards the coast, near Cardiff. Did
you live near that village that has the longest name, and can you say it?
Even before finishing the pint, I can say it, yes.
Go on, say it. That, my friends, is, I think, the longest place name in the world. And was your background? Were you working class, or what were your parents doing?
I guess so. I think my father realised that industry in the valleys was declining even then, and so moved us out and moved us down to the coast. And my brother and I went to school near Newport. It was a fun childhood. We were quite a sporting family. My father was very sporting.
Now, what did he do when he moved to the coast?
He was in the steel industry,
right.
And then moved to work for British Aerospace at Bilton in Bristol as sort of systems integration engineering and that sort of thing.
Was your mum a housewife?
No, well, she was when we were born, but no, Mum worked when we were growing up. She worked in the pathology department of one of the local hospitals. I guess both my parents were quite science-driven in their approach. Both my brother and I tended towards a more creative side of things. I would say my father dragged me kicking and screaming through my maths and physics O-levels.
I was the same, yeah.
So
Funnily enough,
works, right?
Straight C student. And did you go to college there then?
I ended up going to college in Cardiff, to journalism school. It was pretty obvious quite early on that I had a knack or a skill in terms of writing, creative writing. And also a skill for being able to explain things in quite a simple form or a direct form, believe it or not. And I mean, at school I'd produced plays, I'd edited my school magazine, all those usual things. So eventually, I mean, to be honest, I ended up with journalism because every other course when I looked at universities and things, I was like, 3-4 years, you've got to be kidding. I've got more things to do with my life.
Yeah. Did you tell me once that you got into sports journalism when you came out of college?
That's correct.
Yes. I remembered something. That's good.
To me, actually, the first thing I did was I covered motorsport for local papers on a freelance basis.
Formula 3 sort of thing?
Formula 3, special saloons.
Right. Motorbikes, Barry Sheen back then?
No, I didn't do motorbikes until I moved into the sports position on a newspaper. But I'd always been interested in sport. I'd done
We share a love of Manchester United, who are falling on hard times at the moment. But And what was that was so your big break was into a head of sports?
No, not at all. I mean, it was. I'd done all the sort of the cub rounds of reporting and news reporting, criminal courts, that sort of thing. The first place to offer me a job was the Lincolnshire Echo.
Oh, that well-known.
Absolutely bastion of journalism.
Lincoln City, the Imps.
The Imps, yeah. So I, you know what? They wouldn't have given me the job. I don't consider myself particularly to be a feminist or a women's trailblazer or anything like that, but I don't think they would have given me the job. Became available of the soccer writer on the paper, so I applied for it. Didn't assume I'd get it. I'm still convinced the only reason I got it because I was probably cheaper than all the guys.
I mean, there would have been very few female soccer writers.
I was the second one to be appointed in the country.
Yeah.
Julie Birchall was already working in
the Times,
in London, and sort of blazed a trail there. But I.
What was it like, going into a sweaty dressing room and trying to get interviews? Well, you know what I mean.
Well, the thing that happened with me, the first thing that the club did. So I was appointed Lincolnshire Echo. So the team I was responsible for was Lincoln City.
Right.
The first thing the club did was ban me from the away team coach.
Why was that?
And because I was a woman. And the comment was the coach is an unfit place for a woman to be because it is an extension of the dressing room. But what happened, the first I knew about it, I happened to be in London that weekend, and I got a phone call from Times of London saying, we understand you've been appointed to this position. We've heard they've banned you. What are you going to do about it?
So you were becoming the news.
And I was like, what are you talking about? So I called my sports editor. I said, what's going on? And they said, well, look, they've banned you from the bus and it's gone. I went quickly from being thrilled to have been appointed to, being the news. And it was, Cosmopolitan ran a cartoon with a suitably endowed woman as a referee and a various caption. We had local MPs saying, this should go to the European Court of Equal Opportunity. And
meanwhile, back at the typewriter.
I was very fortunate to have a sports editor who said, you are not a woman football writer, you're a football writer, get out there and do your job.
Right.
So that's what I had to do, but I couldn't go on the bus.
Did the players know? Were the players cheeky or understanding, or a combination of all of them?
I know there was a certain bet going on the dressing room.
Who'd get into your pants first?
Basically.
Who did?
Nobody. Hey, look, it's a book that you could write about that sort of thing for certain, but I pretty much knew I wanted to have a degree of credibility.
Of course, yeah.
And so.
How many of the grounds have you visited, do you reckon, in your beat?
I've never been to Anfield, believe it or not.
Anfield, as I call it, to be grammatically correct. It's not Anfield, it's Anfield. Sorry.
I've never been to Newcastle.
Right.
I've been to most of the others.
Really?
Yeah.
You also were a referee. Was this around the time you were a referee, or when did you become a referee?
Yeah, well, the whole...
as if the journalism wasn't enough. No, I'm going to become a fucking referee. How did that come about?
Well, the local referees association thought, well, we need more guys to get in to study, to do the course. So maybe if we get this girl to come in along then and do the course, they'll sign up as well. I'm not sure that worked. But, I couldn't say no, because how the hell can I write about the game if I don't know the rules?
Yeah.
So I qualified as a Class 3 referee, which means you could do schoolboys up to 40 Sundays, some Sunday soccer games.
And did you do a lot of refereeing then?
Not a lot, but enough.
Right.
And it was shortly before I came to Singapore, came to Asia, and when I first arrived here, I did some games. It's so damn hot.
I know.
And
I remember using you for an ad campaign that I did when I first came here, and we had you dressed as a referee. Do you remember that for Lady Card UOB?
You know what? I'd forgotten about it, but funnily enough, I was sorting through paperwork.
There it was.
Offices, and there it was.
We took a picture of Julie dressed as a referee in a changing room, and it was like...
Yeah, one in a changing room and one in my office gear.
Yeah.
In Donna Karan, for the sake of... just to talk about the dichotomy in my life.
Why did you end up stopping doing the sports writing, or what happened there?
I never intended to stop. So yes, it was the end of the season, and it just, what am I going to do now? So I decided I'd do some travelling, and the whole idea was, I'll get on a plane, I'll do the Australia leg thing, and go back, by the start of the next season, and get a job in one of the nationals. Sounds so blasé.
Had you worked out that you loved journalism now, that was going to be it, or did you feel it? Did you feel like you'd found your passion?
I knew I liked communicating. I think I was aware of that I had an ability to influence people positively or negatively, and to do it I would hope, in a non-confrontational manner.
Yeah.
Although I don't necessarily think that's the perception people have of me.
No, I agree. Yeah.
So, and I'm still a great lover of the written word or the communicative word. I think it's been bringing things bang up to date. I think the fact that the New Yorker magazine just got a Pulitzer for its work on the potential next big one in the Pacific Northwest, or the story that broke around about the Panama Papers. The fact that was done, that the papers were leaked to a German media house, who then put it out to an international journalist syndication, who then fact-checked and were able to put together an accurate story. Now, whether or not it comes out what's legal and what's illegal in that, but the fact that there is that still that hunger to discover that and to deliver it in an informed and authoritative fashion, I think is fantastic. And I think that's the same about art, and you will laugh at this or not be surprised at this, I should say. I look back at people, or I look at people who I consider to be driving for perfection and not believing they attain it. I've been watching recently some old video clips of Brian Wilson in the 60s and how he created Pet Sounds, and the amount of tape that went. I mean, when Good Vibrations was when he made it, I mean, it was at that time the most expensive single that had ever been made. But you watch the Wrecking Crew, the band in the studio, and how he saw it as his, the whole thing is his pocket symphony, and it's beautiful to watch. And I think it will be very sad, whether it's a blogger or an editor or a copywriter or an actor or anything else, the moment they stop pushing to be the best, or to stop finding new frontiers, I think that would be a big shame.
Well, there's anyone can do it now, as well. There's huge competition. And
I think the worrying thing is whether we can differentiate mediocrity from something that is, just superb, and whether we can deliver in the soundbite, which is so
soundbitey.
Whether we can actually deliver.
I'll use that as a soundbite for this.
Yeah.
But you could argue it's maybe always been this way. Like going back to art back in the day, Renaissance. It's like what's good, what's mediocre, what's excellent. It does come down to. I mean, I find that the interesting thing on television is just the sort of the absolute parallels that television has gone to. On the one hand, it's probably had in the last 15 years some of the best dramatic TV we've ever had. Plus, on the other side, some of the most inane drivel that's just propping up maybe another side of the masses. But it's almost like the middle section is just vanishing. You're either going to invest in doing it really well, as you say, or you're just going to just produce schlock. But they'll always produce schlock, right? We produce schlock in advertising, we produce schlock in records, we produce schlock in magazines. I just see a wave of too much information, and trying to find the needles in the haystack, the gems, the diamonds in the rough, whatever you want to call it, is proving more and more difficult.
Yeah, that becomes hard. And I also notice that we become increasingly critical. So you're so busy looking for the gem, and so busy thinking, oh wow, where is it? And
frustrating.
It's very frustrating.
How did you then, tell me how you've ended up finishing though this stint in England? And
my whole plan was to do this travel thing, and then I came to, my first stop happened to be Singapore, and while I was here I helped out a friend on a writing project, interviewing some in the travel industry actually, and while I was doing that I was offered a job doing PR. I still don't know what PR is.
That's what they want you to do.
Isn't that what everybody should be doing?
Yeah, you're supposed to not know what PR is. Some cities.
But some great clients, Singapore Airlines, Singapore Tourism Promotion Board was the
What year was that when you came here?
It must have been 88, 89, something like, possibly 88. Good number in Chinese. That explains a lot. That's why I've been here.
Yeah, sure. And so you came here and then thought, I quite like it. I quite like this.
No, not at all. I've never thought I quite liked it.
Right.
I've never actually got to that point. I mean, obviously I do quite like it. Otherwise I wouldn't have stayed here.
Quarter of a century or whatever.
Don't say it.
And then what happened then?
The thing that surprised me about public relations in Asia was that when they wanted to know something about a story that was breaking, the journalist would call the PR company. And I wanted to say, I'm the last person you should be calling to get a story. But anyway, on one of those phone calls from Hong Kong, by the end of the call, the editor-in-chief on the other end said, oh, I'm looking for an editor for a magazine I'm producing that the company produces in Singapore. Would you be interested?
Right.
So similarly, I went, yeah, okay. So I moved then to do a luxury lifestyle title called The Peak with a company called Chain Communications. So suddenly I found myself editing a magazine, which I'd never done before. I was there about 2.5 years or something, and then I got a call from one of my competitor publishers telling me that an Australian company was coming into the country and would I be interested? They're looking for an editor-in-chief. Would I be interested? And I went, no, not really. Who's the company? And what's the company? And I said, Australian Consolidated Press. And I went, no, not at all.
Pretty big.
Tell me a little bit more about them.
Yeah.
They went, it's Kerry Packer.
Yeah.
And I went,
Heard
one day cricket.
Yeah, heard of him.
Yeah, okay, I'll come and have a chat. So I went and talked about cricket for.
Did you meet Kerry Packer?
Yeah.
What did you think of him?
Well, I thought he was an enigma and a great character.
Yeah, he polarizes people, but I've heard some really fun stories about him.
Well, I mean, you can hear there's a million stories. I mean, I guess he was passionate about whatever he was doing, and I think there's not enough of that around anywhere. And particularly now when managers, leaders, business leaders are focused so much on bottom line, it's very easy to lose the empathy and very easy to lose the passion.
Yeah.
Kerry never did that.
Kerry Packer, for those listening, is like there's two big media moguls from Australia, Rupert Murdoch and Kerry Packer, and Packer was every bit as big as Murdoch back in those days. Murdoch's probably bigger now, and Kerry Packer's no longer with us, but his sons, I think, are still pretty much in control of a lot of Australia and around the world.
Well, James, his son, is engaged to Mariah Carey.
That's right, James Packer, Mariah Carey. You heard it here first, no you didn't. But okay, so you still don't even dig Singapore, but you've been here for so long. But like, were you just allowing your life to kind of go, and all these opportunities kept popping up?
I always think of it as an accidental career.
Right.
Because certainly, so I moved to to ACP, I got the job, and we are the first magazine. I actually
because you were young. When were you still in your 20s when you got that job?
Yeah.
And you were head publisher.
I was editor-in-chief, and I was brought in to launch Cosmopolitan, but the government in Singapore continued to ban it. So we had to go through, and we ended up launching the Singapore edition of Elle first.
Yeah.
And suddenly I found myself doing a woman's fashion magazine, which was so far away from who I was. Kind of bizarre to me.
One of the things I have about magazines is I don't know how you just keep going and then pick yourself up and start the next one. I mean, tell me a little bit about how these mags get made and how you keep your passion for them.
I think there are two key factors that intrigued me and drove me. The one was publishing women's magazines in countries, because we then rolled out across Asia, in countries where you were still able to make a difference to women who were interested in life questions. So whether that's relationships, sex, fashion, shop, all that stuff was still new. And when you were breaking into Malaysia, into Jakarta, into Thailand, it was a different kind of journalism. I mean, the reason why Cosmopolitan was banned then was because it was considered to be too racy or sending the wrong, too promiscuous for society. So, and then having to publish according to the sensitivities and mores of a given country. So, we went into Malaysia and we had to have a completely different approach to things. So, and there's no point trying to be combative or trying to blaze a trail by being deliberately aggressive or deliberately controversial, because you still have to run a business and you still have to make sure people's salaries are paid at the end of the month. And
tell me a little bit about the question of, as I said, about just how you keep going, because issues turns into months, turns into volumes, turns into years. I mean,
well, for me,
does it just become like a kind of a machine, or
with ACP was within 18 months. I think I'd become the CEO. At that point we had 2 magazines in Singapore, or a magazine in Malaysia, then a magazine in Thailand, then you've got a magazine in Taiwan, and then meanwhile you've got 3 magazines in Singapore, and then 4 magazines in Singapore. So I was on the road constantly. When you're building something and when you're enthused by it, and again I come back to the people I was fortunate enough to work with and the teams we were fortunate to create, there were some very talented people who responded to the vision, who responded to the what we were trying to do, and therefore you've got I found it to be a very collaborative and a growth-oriented situation. We had, I'm not saying it was perfect, of course it wasn't, but in my experience we had very little politics in any of the offices. Basically, a lot of it is because you didn't have the time.
No politics, They did a nice documentary back. I remember it's kind of stuck with me. The Crying Girl. It was the Princess Diana death in '97. I guess it was August or whatever, '97.
That's right.
And there was a documentary crew in your office as that was all going down.
That's correct. The ABC, in Australia, the public broadcasting, they were in Singapore doing a documentary on how Australian companies could prosper in Asia. Yeah. And yes, they were in our office, and we were launching a Singapore edition of the Woman's Weekly, so the Singapore Woman's Weekly, and magazine already at the printer, and she was due. There was rumours that she was going to come to Singapore to do a charity dinner, and of course then she was with Dodi. I find that she had relations with. She knew Imran Khan quite well, so there was a strong Asian. So yes, there was
quite well in quotes there. I think.
Yeah, quite an interesting story we'd put together. And then yes, I remember I was driving down one of the roads and listening to the BBC World Service. Get on the phone again straight away. Okay, can we pull that story? And yes, and the editor, our editor-in-chief, Tara Barker of the Women's Weekly. She was quite affected by it.
I know that this image of her she was really upset.
On camera, yes.
On camera. It was so sad. I knew her. I think I met her a couple of times.
She's still there. She's still in the company, yeah.
Hello, Tara, if you're listening. So how long did you spend at ACP?
20 years.
Right. And one of the questions I have really is, when do you decide, and how do you decide, all right, I'm going to move on and try something else?
Well, in that instance...
Because it was very successful. You came in and you grew the business to a stable.
Yeah. Thoroughbred. Stable.
Thoroughbred of magazines.
Yeah, so we were publishing Cosmopolitan in 2 markets. We were publishing editions of Harper's Bazaar, and we had some of the biggest names on our covers. We were shooting Cindy Crawford, Janet Jackson. It was successful. And then in Australia was going through some changes, so we decided to sell the Southeast Asia business.
Who bought that?
Singapore Press Holdings.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What sort of a fist have they made of it?
It's Cosmopolitan closed last year. It's a tough market out there for magazines at the moment.
We're in Singapore, we can't criticise the government. Sorry, we'll scratch that. But it's on tape here because her pad is probably fucked up. Sorry. Is it fair to say your job was like Anna Wintour's? Is that the same job that she does?
I get that a lot. People say that. In fact,
but was she like the actual job spec of her and you is kind of similar? Would that be right?
It was, in terms of the fact that the amount of control she had, or how she runs her, as I perceive it, how she runs her operation. She has a great team around her. She has an awful lot of. Before she went across titles, when she was at Vogue, she had a lot of bottom line responsibility.
Right.
And she took that very seriously. Relationships with advertisers and things like that seemed to be a big part of her job. My job had grown into something where there was M&A activity and more managing licenses.
And you didn't really go, it's not your speed to be all frou into the fashion thing, which she is, right? I mean, you're into it, but like you're not the kind of.
I mean, when I was editor in chief, I mean, I was in Paris and doing the shows and the fashion shows.
But you'd have to go to this. But I mean, she's almost like.
Well, she is a
god or whatever.
She really is. Says. Well, she's a very she's a real director of fashion.
Yes,
I mean, she is such a strong. Her endorsement can make or break a designer these days. Yeah. And I think she's doing it's with the new wave of designers that are coming through. It must be increasingly difficult again to pick the couturier, because the same pressure is on a fashion designer.
Right.
As is a creative director.
Yeah, you're only as good as your last collection.
You're only as good, but you've also got, it used to be a couple of collections or 3 collections a year. Now you've got to worry about homewares, makeup, perfume, cruise lines, pret-a-porter, high-end. I mean, the whole shebang. So it's a tough one to then maintain your standards in that.
Did you oversee a lot of great change in the designers coming out of Asia?
I haven't really seen a great deal of creative change. What I have seen is a bit better marketing around them, a little bit more investment into them.
I mean, is it fair we haven't really got a world designer, or too many of them anyway, out of Southeast Asia, India, Indonesia, Vietnam? I can't think of one myself, but that's not saying much.
Are they competing on a French standard or an Italian? No.
Yeah.
Outside of Japan.
What would you say to somebody listening to this who's actually in journalism school?
One of the biggest strengths I've had in my career is I've worked in virtually every department from laying out a page to writing the stuff to doing the business plan to marketing plan. I've done that. I don't think you can know too much. You do need to learn how to filter out the information you don't need. You need to know how to craft a sentence
Yeah.
cleverly but very simply. The fewer syllables you use, the better. Read the Dubliners if you want simple language in a complex. It's perfect. You know, you're going to write stories 1,000 words, 3,000 words, but you need to be able to tell the story in 5 paragraphs. And that was back then. It's never been more applicable now.
Yeah, it's just soundbite culture.
But you see, it's soundbite culture, but people are writing soundbites and they're trying to write hooks. It went to headlines, and now it's gone, oh, you just need a picture and a hook to make people click through. But a hook isn't good enough. You actually need to be able to say in 15 words what you need, the information you need to pass on. If they click through, that's a matter of choice.
Yeah. Am I hearing at the back of this a sort of bemoaning the training or the because of the sort of culture we live in, people want to be there faster. They don't want to cut corners. They want to be up the food chain and they want to be famous. I mean, is that what I'm hearing behind a lot of this, or?
Oh, I think there's a definite need for, it's a fashionable term now, mentoring.
Yeah.
I have been fortunate enough to work with for some brilliant people. I consider them brilliant. I probably learned more off the people who I thought were crap.
Yeah.
Because then you learn how not to do it.
Yeah.
But you know, the assumption that you think you know it all, that's when whatever God, universe you believe in will throw you the curveball and you think you're so smart, try this. Yeah. I'm a great subscriber to that. And you know, you can learn from anywhere and be observant. People forget to look at things and forget to observe.
What about in a kind of a life area rather than in specifically to do with say journalism or your career? What have you learnt in a life sense that would be good passing on to
breathing
people?
Helps. Eating helps. You know what? You just got to accept the fact that you will move smoothly from crisis to crisis, and
they keep on coming.
They just keep on coming. So, I work.
Does it get easier as you get older to go through them, or harder?
I think you get better able to manage them.
Right.
I mean, I'm quite Buddhist in my approach to things like that. It's the past is history, the future is a mystery, the present is a gift. So enjoy it. That's Yoda, by the way. That's
a nice place to end the conversation with a quote from the Buddha himself or herself.
Yoda.
Thank you very much. Julie Sherborn, thank you for being on A Pint with Seaniebee. Really enjoyed that chat again. I learned a lot of stuff that I didn't know about you, and I'll catch you next time around.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.